Today I'm going to talk about what you can do when you are stuck on a problem. So I'm going to show you first my beautiful web page that I've designed here, and I'm going to cause a problem for myself, and I'm going to try and solve it all live. So this might be a little more rambly than usual. It's not scripted. I do not know the exact answers to all this stuff. I will have to work through it just like you would. So what you see here is my page done with Bootstrap 3.3.7. I've centered the headline here. I have an image as a circle, and I've got two columns. For your final project, I want you to use Bootstrap 4. So we're going to switch to Bootstrap 4 and ruin all my beautiful stuff here. First, I want to give you a quick overview of what I'm doing with Bootstrap 3. I have container, row, column. Remember, that's what has to happen with Bootstrap, and that's how you can get things in these. These are columns of 6 out of 12, and this is a full width column, 12 out of 12, although it is centered. I did add to this top row. I added a margin top of 40 pixels. That just gives me 40 pixels from the top of the thing. You can see if I delete that, it'll go off the thing there. And then Bootstrap 3 provides a class called center block, but that will only work if your if your width of the element that you have center block on is explicitly defined. So I give it a width of 427 pixels. How do I know that it is 427 pixels? Well, frankly, I guessed. And I know that if I would put 426 pixels here, it would break it into two lines. So I started, I'll just do something like, to figure this out, I would just go something like 400 pixels. Okay, that's too little. And then I would go like 500 pixels. And I don't think that I want the least amount of pixels possible to truly center these two elements. And so I whittle my way down. I go like 450 pixels. And I think that I can handle 420 pixels, but I can't. It breaks it to two lines. Eventually, that's how I ended up with 427 pixels. Not very graceful, but it works. And so it maintains its center on different screens. Does it? Yeah, it just takes a second for glitch to readjust. So, and then these two columns of text here. I'll talk a little bit more. I'm using some Bootstrap classes, image responsive, to make this image fit inside of. Actually, I don't think I need to use that because I'm not using a column. This isn't split into columns. So if this was split into columns, you would want the image to be responsive so it fits in the columns. What instead I've done is I've actually defined the width of 70 pixels. I've just given it a static width, and so it's not responsive, and I don't need that. See, you can refactor things all the time, even when you think it's done. It does have the class of image circle to give it like that sort of style. There's the source, a screenshot, that's the alternate text. Now I told you I gave it a fixed width of 70 pixels. I also, with these are just CSS styles, and I don't know if I've truly explained this too much, but you can give every single HTML element its own style within the element itself. You can write style equals blah, blah, blah. Now, often you want to use a class instead so that you don't have to do this all over your web page. You want to define a class like image circle. That's a Bootstrap class, but that would just be used anytime you wanted to make something circular. And so anytime I wanted to make something a width of 70 pixels, to have all these properties, I would just make a class. But because this is only happening once on the page, I don't need to make a class. I can do what's called inline styles. So you style them right in here. You style and then equal sign. And then this is just CSS right in here, complete with the semicolons. Notice that it's got semicolons. I'll blow it up a little bigger to make it easier to see. This will be about how big I can do it right now. So it has to have, I have got a fixed width. Display, it has to be display equals inline. So normally images and headlines are called block elements. So meaning that if I just put another headline here, it would go to the second line. So if I just do H1 again, it would be second line. And you'll see it's But because these two elements are inline, the image and the H1 here, they are they're going to stay in the same line, and even though they're block elements. So just delete that for now. So they both have inline, and then I have some margin happening here, and this is just to position the little thumbnail where I wanted it, the circle. If you don't have any margins, it's kind of off-centered. You know, my OCD kicks in and says we have to push these pixels around. So I use margin, and the first thing I'm doing is a negative margin of negative 20 pixels, and that actually pulls it up a little bit, pulls the whole thing up. And then I put a margin of 20 pixels to the right-hand side. Remember, when you're using margin in this format, it goes top, right, left, bottom, like clockwise from 12 o'clock, basically. It's like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So top, right, bottom, left. I don't know if I said that wrong just a minute ago, but it's top, right, bottom, left. I think I might, yeah. Hopefully you get it. All right, moving on. We're going to look at the text now, and the text is divided up into two columns. You can see that's 6 out of 12. And remember, Bootstrap is a 12-column grid. I could do something like 4 here and 4 here, and now it would be a 1/3, 1/3, and we have room for another third here because it's 4 divided by 12 is 1/3. So we'll put it back to 6 out of 12. And again, I also have on these columns a style of margin top 40 pixels. I don't like using it multiple times like I am here, so I could just rewrite a class and say, see, I've used it up here as well. So let's just write a class called, well, let's do this right? So we would do root, and I would want to do size, I'm really going for it here, base size. Let's say our base size is 20 pixels, and then size 4 is 20 pixels. Size 4 is actually base size. So we do var -- base size. And let's say size 5 is base size calc. Remember, we had this in we learned this in CSS variables. Calc of 2 times. So size 5 is how we get our thing, and then we can do a class of top margin, and this is margin top, and we would give it var size 5, 40 pixels. So now I'm going to give everything this class and take that out, and let's just see. So this is a class of top margin. Copy that, take all this out, and it shouldn't change. Yes, it did not change. And here I can do the same thing. It's not, and you'll notice that the style isn't adding another 40 pixels on top of 40 pixels. What happens is that there's lots of what's called specificity in CSS, and so you can. I'll just give you a general overview of this right now, in that you can put some styles inside of this, but they will be overwritten if you use the style tag inside your CSS. So if you do this and put any styles in here, it'll be overwritten. And then that will be overwritten by the inline styles. So what happens is, again, the C in CSS stands for cascading. So these styles are just going to cascade upon each other. And so, for example, this top margin here is 40 pixels in this class. We know that. But if I made this 80 pixels here, it would overwrite that thing that I just declared because it's more specific here. So it goes your style sheet, CSS, then it goes style tags up at the top of your page, and then finally the inline styles. There's more to it than just that, but that's a good summary, I think. So again, I can delete these inline styles because we're declaring it with this amazing new class that we defined, and this class is using these variables, which is awesome because if I ever just change these variables, change one of them, it'll change the top margin on everything. So when you start to see numbers repeat, that's when you know that you should maybe refactor it into a variable. So we did that. Still haven't gotten to the core of this video, which is solving problems and how we do it. But hopefully I've explained this code and how it works. I will say I'm using this Bootstrap class of text justify. That's just a thing that comes with Bootstrap 3, and that's how you get these non-ragged edges here. You'll see that when I delete that class. Sorry. Let's just delete that. You can see now it has the ragged edges. And now if I put that back, all right, we're ready to rock. I click format this file often. I do like the code to read nice and pretty. The other thing I do to make my life a little easier, and this will come in handy as we try and solve problems, is if I have columns, I break them out so that I can see where the columns are. And I'll do the same thing here. So now you can see that this whole page is really made up of, and when I format it, better not take that away. Okay, it takes some of them away, but it doesn't take all of them away. This whole page is made out of 3 columns. 1 column across the top, left 6 out of 12 here and 6 out of 12 here. Okay, let's ruin everything by putting in Bootstrap 4. So we're going to go to getbootstrap.com, 4.4. I'm going to click Get Started and copy and paste this CDN right here. Paste that. Okay, format the file again so it's all readable. And you can see that everything is nice and ruined. I don't have columns anymore. Everything is in 1 column. I don't have the circle anymore. So everything is bad times. I don't have even a centered headline. Bad times. I'm going to try and fix this as quick as possible. Walking through my process. First thing I do. Hey Siri, set a timer for 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes and counting.
So there's my Pomodoro clock. The next thing I want to do is, well, I've minimized distractions. I've got the door closed. I'm ready to focus on this problem, and I've got the Pomodoro clock going. And then after that, I want to focus on one thing at a time. And the first thing is, let's talk about this image. Let's make this a circle. So I'm just going to Google Bootstrap for image circle. I'm not even going to spell it right because this is magic. Here's the official documentation, which I always like. But it looks like they're saying image circle class not working there. So here's what I mean, you saw how quickly I got to the answer. The website that always comes up for programmers and gives us answers right away is called Stack Overflow. And I've got such a habit where I don't even read the question. It's just, I've been doing this for years, such a habit where the first thing I do is scroll to the most upvoted answer. And I can see that it's now called rounded circle. So you can see in the amount of time I just Googled, I misspelled it, I was terrible, but I found the Stack Overflow link, I went, and I see that it's now called rounded circle, as explained here. And they even give a link to the Bootstrap documents. Great. There it is, rounded circle. Whew. All right, let's move. Where was that at? Image circle is now called rounded circle. Okay, rock and roll. Let's talk about centering this now, this headline and whatever. And so what I want to do is I want to isolate the problem. I can already tell that the Bootstrap 3 classes of center block did not work at all. So I remember I used this width of 427 pixels to work with center block. So I'm going to delete it all because I know that that's Bootstrap 3 stuff and we have broken it. Okay, so my display inline is still working. My width of the icon is still working. That's good. The layout of the image is still where I want it to be. And both these things are displayed in line. Okay, I'm not complaining about that. What I need now is I need that to be centered. So how can I do that? How can I center something with Bootstrap 4? And so what I can do is clean up your tabs. It's always good to be tidy with your tabs. Center div Bootstrap. I can't spell today. Now, you'll notice that I said center div because I have the whole thing, the image and the H1, wrapped in a div, and that's really how I'm thinking about it. I've got the whole thing in one division. I think that's what div stands for, is division. One section. Programmers are just coming up with names for things that try and mean these abstract concepts. So we just say div. So I've got this one div, and so I knew to Google center div. That's what I want to do. I want to center the div in Bootstrap 4. First thing is it comes with a flex, but there's also some Stack Overflow results. Let's do more results from Stack Overflow. You can click on more results from Stack Overflow to get only Stack Overflow results. And you can also learn this little bit of Google foo here. You can always type site : stackoverflow.com to only get from that site. So let's try our trick again. No need for extra CSS. Okay, I'm happy with that. Containers are full height. So this question is actually saying center vertical and horizontal alignment. Vertical center, horizontal center. Text center to center display. Let's try that. I've made these things display inline, so why not say class equals text center. Okay, that doesn't work. MX auto for centering inside. Flex. Justify content center to center columns. That's interesting. I know that I'm using a column. What if I put it here? Okay. That's not working. No, that's working. What I'd like to do is to, again, start with a clean slate. And one thing that's bothering me right now, and what I notice might bother me in the future, might give me a little more trouble, is that I lost my columns for some reason. So let's figure that out for a second, because maybe something about the columns is not, I just tried a solution that was centering the columns, but then I looked and realized none of my columns are really working. Okay. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about column XS12. I'm just going to Google that. Col XS12 Bootstrap 4 not working. Here it is, Stack Overflow. Again, I've got this habit of just scrolling down and looking at the answer. You can spend the time and read someone's problem, but honestly, so many times someone's problem is better expressed in the answer. Because they're asking for, they're offering screenshots, and it's very complicated how they've asked this question. So column XS.star, which just means anything, has been dropped in Bootstrap 4 in favor of column -star. Replace column XS12 with column 12 and it will work as expected. Well, all right, let's do it. Okay, that shouldn't change anything for that one, but let's look at these 6 column things. Okay. Cool. And it all works. And the text justify looks like they didn't change that class in Bootstrap 4. So now let's try this thing where, let's try this justify content center. Maybe that will work. Or maybe not. Okay, it doesn't. All right, we're still struggling with centering things with Bootstrap 4. So the official documentation, the first thing I found was this thing on Flex. So quickly manage the layout, alignment, and sizing of grid columns. Okay, I'm happy with all this. Flex. I have a Flexbox container. So if I apply the class of dFlex, this is a long document, so I'm just going to kind of look to where I need to go. Justify content. Justify content utilities. Justify content center. dFlex. Justify content center. Blammo. That's it. Done. So what you saw was setting a timer, focused on a problem, one thing at a time, removing all distractions. And I'll tell you another secret that is just innately happening through this video is, and this is what you can practice, is talking out loud. Express it to yourself out loud. What do you expect to happen? What do you want to happen? Well, I want this to do this or whatever. And then say out loud what's actually happening. So what I expect to happen, what's actually happening. So you might say to yourself, I expect that this flex thing, this is the first, when I typed in center div bootstrap 4, it was the first thing that came up. I was a little reluctant because I wanted a quick and easy answer from Stack Overflow. I didn't get it. So your next step is to dig into the documentation. And that's really the reality of it. Any developer will tell you they spend a lot of time reading documentation. And once you get it, once you know the documentation, you're just great. You got it. You can just slap it in like I did and it works. But then Bootstrap 5 gets released. So you got to read all the documentation on that. So that's really the reality of it. You just saw me problem solving, converting everything from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4.4.1. And I hope you got a good idea of how I solve problems. It is a combination of, setting that timer for myself, isolating the problem, working on things one at a time, talking out loud about it, and then Googling it and using some Google Foo and looking at Stack Overflow and looking into the documentation to really solve these problems and be on my way.